Some of you know your Bibles really well. I've been waiting for this. But this is actually one of the first things that Jesus talked about. Now, Jesus was God's son. All on the same page there? Jesus, Son of God. He was present when God the Father gave the Israelites the 10 Commandments. He might have even participated in the conversation about how to put them together. And he watched from heaven as the Israelites slowly turned the 6th commandment into a simple prohibition against murder, and even then barely that. And over the centuries, Jesus saw the bar slowly get lowered as God's people started collectively missing the point until finally Jesus could take it no more. He came down to earth, he endured childbirth, growing pains, puberty, and when he was old enough to be taken seriously, he stepped up on a mountain, just like Moses got up there on Mount Sinai. Stepped up on the mountain, and he gave his own version of the 10 Commandments. And here's one of the first things he said. You have heard that it was said, do not murder, and that anybody who murders is subject to judgment. You've heard that it was said that, right? Right? But I, Jesus, tell you that anyone who is angry with his brother is subject to judgment. Whoever insults his brother will be liable to the council, and whoever says, you fool, will be liable to the fires of hell. So Jesus is making the same point I'm making, or more respectfully, I'm making the same point Jesus made. The command can't be limited to simply not murdering others. We shouldn't murder others because they were created by God in his image. Given that, we shouldn't even be angry with them. We shouldn't even insult them. We shouldn't even call them names. They're created in God's image. They look like God. They are like God. How dare we call them names? We're not murdering them, but our crime is just as heinous. I mean, in effect, Jesus comes along, sees our low bar, and says, you think you can jump that bar? Well, how about now? I don't know if that's how they raise bars. How about now? This past week, for example, I read a story on the BBC that illustrates this. In October of 2008, a 43-year-old Japanese woman was arrested by police in Sapporo for killing her husband. Only it wasn't really her husband. The woman met her so-called husband in an online virtual world called MapleStory. You know what an online virtual world is, by the way? In MapleStory, players from around the world band together on the internet to defeat monsters, virtual monsters. Players also engage in social relationships, though, and this woman met another player, and their characters in the program decided to get married in the virtual world. One day, though, the woman decides to log in and discovers that she has been divorced by her virtual husband. As she said, quote, I was suddenly divorced without a word of warning that made me so angry. In retaliation, the woman hacked into her online husband's account and had his character killed off. When the man logged into the game and found his character had been murdered, he suspected his virtual ex-wife and contacted police, real police, not virtual police. The real police arrested the woman for her murderous crime, and as of the writing of the story, she was awaiting possible punishment of up to 5 years in prison and $5,000 for killing her online virtual husband. Now, to be clear, she actually wasn't arrested for murdering her virtual husband, but for hacking into his account, which is illegal. But either way, this is Jesus' point. This is Jesus' point. Any act of anger that does insult to God's gift of life to another person, no matter how trivial, like killing somebody's avatar, is a violation of the 6th commandment and leaves us liable to punishment of far more than 5 years in prison or $5,000. What does Jesus say? Anyone who says you fool is in danger of the fires of hell. We're not killing them, but we're not treating them with the awe and the respect and the honor that they deserve as God's beloved creation. So to put the 6th command another way, it means this: treat all people with dignity as the divinely gifted creations they are. To treat someone with dignity means to esteem them, to value them, to regard them as people made in God's image, as He made you and as He made me. That's the guts of the 6th commandment. Not just murdering people, but treating them as God's special creatures. which leads us to a question. I doubt, going to go out on a limb here, I doubt anybody in here has murdered anybody recently or ever. Unless you have, in which case, welcome to Rooftop, and we encourage you to turn yourself in. But I doubt anybody ever has. But we all demean the divine dignity of others. We don't kill them. We just demean the dignity God gave them. We ignore them, preoccupying ourselves with our own concerns, not thinking they're worth our time and energy. We label them and confine them to our stereotypes, unaware of the strong likelihood that they are their own person and everyone is unique. We refuse to stand up and defend them when they aren't present to defend themselves. We act impatiently and rudely towards them, forgetting that we would never actually treat God that way, we don't think. We interrupt them because what we have to say is more important than what they're in the process of saying. We give favorable treatment to some over others. We don't talk to them. We gossip about them. We reduce them to names. We treat them like sex objects. We give them cold shoulders. We write them off. Every day we break the sixth commandment. When we fail to treat the people around us as the fully gifted people loved and created by God that we all are. In fact, if you're here this morning and you're really serious about hearing this message, and you all are listening so attentively, but I'm not convinced that everybody in this room is fully interested in hearing this message. But if you're really interested in hearing this message, here's a prayer assignment for you. Ask God to show you how you treat people with anything less than the complete dignity they deserve as God's special creations. Ask God to show you how you treat people with anything less than the dignity and sanctity they deserve. Ask God to show you how you disrespect the image of God in your boss, in your spouse, and your neighbors, and your children. Now, to be clear, in his version of the sixth commandment, Jesus is not giving us another set of rules. Some people have thought that he was. They think he was improving on the sixth commandment. In other words, you have heard that it was said, do not murder, but I give you 3 better rules. Do not murder. Do not insult people. Don't call people names. That's how some people read Jesus. They're just giving new, tougher rules. But that's not what he's doing. He's giving everyday examples of what it means to not treat people with dignity. He could have given any number of examples. But not only does he give negative examples of what it means to not treat people with sanctity, he gives us positive examples of what it means to treat people with dignity as well. And with the couple minutes I have left, I want to look at those examples with you. Here's the first example he gives. Therefore, if you are offering your gift at the altar, and there remember that your brother or sister has something against you, leave your gift there in front of the altar. First, go and be reconciled to that person, then come and offer your gift. Therefore, if you are offering your gift at the altar, and there remember that your brother or sister has something against you, leave your gift at the altar. First, go and be reconciled with that person, then come and offer your gift. So in the first example, Jesus describes the situation in which one of his followers is at the altar offering a gift, at the Jewish altar, at the temple. Now, while there, it occurs to this person that there is someone in the community who has a problem with him. This may or may not be a big deal, but the fact that it's unresolved causes the worshiper to drop his gift, go find the brother, work it out, come back to the temple. That's how valuable the relationship and that person's concerns are. How sacred they are. Valuable enough to interrupt worship to go work it out. That's what it means to treat someone with dignity. In fact, the situation Jesus is describing here is much more important than just an ordinary worship service. It's hard to actually appreciate the seriousness of what Jesus is describing here. In the first century, if you were offering your gift at the altar, that was a big deal. A huge deal. You were at the moment of truth before God. in the temple. To really appreciate the seriousness of what Jesus is describing here, we got to kind of recast it a little bit. Let's say you're getting married. The minister has just asked for the rings. Everybody is there looking at you. You're in your tuxedo. And right there, as the minister asks for the rings, it occurs to you, I said something rude to my groomsmen a few days ago, and I'm not sure it's been worked out. That just dawns on you. What do you do? Talk about it later. I mean, my bride's going to be really hacked off if I do anything unexpected here. Maybe he's okay. I mean, he's all right, right? It wasn't a big deal. What do? If you really believe that all life, people, friendships, relationships are sacred, what do you do? If we really believe that life, people, and relationships are sacred, why would we not stop their ceremony right there? How could we continue in our act of worship of God and ignore our offenses to people who are made in His image? There's a word for that. You know what the word is? Hypocrisy. In fact, in a few minutes, we're going to be offering our gifts. We're going to be taking an offering. We're going to be presenting our bodies to God in communion. We're going to be singing more songs, the gift of worship. Some of us, including me, are going to do that. And we're going to think of a name, or a face, or a relationship, a brother, a sister, a family member, a church member. Someone God created and endowed with the gift of life. Someone we don't like, can't stand, or in conflict with, have sinned against, or someone who's sinned against us. And we're going to have to decide, do I really want to give God the gift of my worship, my money, my body, while not having done my best to reconcile with that person? Do I really believe that life and people and relationships are as sacred as Jesus says, and am I willing to act on it, even awkwardly so? That's Jesus' first illustration of treating people with dignity. And in the second illustration, Jesus doesn't just talk about getting along with brothers or with groomsmen, he talks about getting along with adversaries. Here's the illustration he gives. He says, settle matters quickly with your adversary who's taking you to court. Do it when? Do it with him while you are on the way. Otherwise, he will hand you over to the officer will hand you over to the judge, and be thrown into prison. Truly, I tell you, you're not going to get out until you've paid the last penny. So in this illustration, Jesus challenges us with the idea that even people who hate us are worth dealing with. Even people who hate us enough to sue us are precious enough in God's sight to try to work with and settle with and cooperate with. In fact, the literal Greek of that phrase, settle matters quickly, the literal Greek of that phrase is make friends with. Make friends with the people who are suing you. Don't just settle matters with them. Make friends with the person who is suing you. Jesus' point is that even the people who hate us the most are worth our attempts at friendship and compromise. That's what it means to believe in the sanctity of life, to love our enemies so much that we're willing to attempt friendship. I mean, besides which, if we don't try getting along with our enemies, things just tend to spiral out of control. They sue you, then you get handed over to the judge, then the officer, then you're thrown into prison and you're stuck.